Hey guys, welcome back to the Thisissoul Shop YouTube channel. Today I'm gonna tell you everything there is to know about frame materials. A frame is the bottom part of a skate which hold the wheels. And the short answer to this question of what material you should take for your frame is if you're just gonna go recreational skating, which is called freestyle skating as well, then take a metal frame for sure. If you're gonna go aggressive skating, which is grinding over rails and curbs, then take a plastic frame. The long and complicated answer is in this video, so continue watching if you want to learn more. We are here right now in our store in Amsterdam. So if you're in the neighborhood, you can always drop by and check out all the frames that are on the market and what the specific differences are of those frames. If you're a web shop customer, so if you want to shop online, we have thisissoul.com. You can go there and buy all the frames that are on the market right there. A frame, as I said, is the bottom part of a skate, and it's the part that holds the wheels. It's attached to the boot, and it can be made of a few different materials, being plastic, metal, or carbon. The core function of a frame is to transfer your control, your movements to the wheels. So if your foot is moving, it's the frame function to make the wheels move. If you have a cheap or weak frame, then the frame can move a little bit. There might be movement in how the frame is attached to the boot. There might be movement in the frame itself, in the material, or there might be some movement in how the axle is mounted to the frame so that the wheels in the frame itself can move a little bit. You don't want this. What you want is that if you move your foot 1 millimeter, that the frame translates this movement to 1 millimeter of movement of the wheels, so that there's a direct transfer of the movement. A bad frame will not have direct power transfer. It will be able to move under your foot without you wanting it. And if you move your foot, the frame will just ignore it and respond maybe a few seconds later. This is not good. You can kind of compare a bad frame with sitting in a car and having your steering wheel loose. One other thing a bad frame does, it will absorb your energy. So every time you push off, you will, instead of pushing yourself forward, you will bend the frame, and the bending of the frame takes energy, and it takes energy away of your forward motion. So if you have a weak frame, then it's actually a lot harder to skate with. Let's dive a little bit into depth about the different materials that there are. So there's plastic, metal, and carbon. Plastic frames are mostly used for children's skates or for aggressive skates. An aggressive skate is a skate that you use to grind with. And there are a few different mixtures of materials that different companies use for these type of frames. In my opinion, honestly though, I wouldn't differentiate too much between aggressive frames and different materials that they use. Except there's one material that is a lot different, and it was called like the UHMW, or the diamond material. This material is super slippery, and it was used, I think, like a decade ago in some frames, so it's maybe not really relevant anymore. But also it was kind of like even too soft, so the axles were getting loose really quickly and it got out of fashion. For metal frames, aluminum is used. And there's 6000 aluminum or 7000 aluminum. 6000 type aluminum is a little bit easy to work with if you're a manufacturer. So it's a little bit cheaper to produce, but it's also a bit softer. The 7000 aluminum is a bit more expensive because it's harder to work with. But if you have the end product, it is a lot stiffer, and stiffness is actually what you want in a frame. But in general, most frames use 6000, and that's just fine. Then there's carbon, which is also now used as a frame material. It's very new as a frame material, so there's not a lot of frames on the market. Me personally, I don't have experience with it yet. I just know that it's super expensive. Obviously, carbon is lighter and stiffer, and those are definitely beneficial aspects of a frame. If we're talking about weight in frames, then we just said that carbon is the lightest. Metal is obviously heavier than plastic, so in kid skates often plastic frames are used, but the added weight of a metal frame is not too bad for adults. So if you're an adult, I would just advise you to get a metal frame. The last and maybe the most important topic that we're going to discuss today regarding frame materials is how they're manufactured. Because how they're manufactured also has to do with what materials are used and how this frame will work. There are 4 different types of manufacturing techniques used for inline skate frames, and those are folding, casting, extrusion, and CNC. Let me explain what all those mean. Folding is when you take a big sheet of metal and you just press it, boom, in a U shape, which is the shape of a frame. An example of this is the rollerblade cruiser. It has a folded frame. Then the second manufacturing technique is casting. And casting is when you take the negative form of something and you pour it with liquid material, you let it hard, you take out that negative or the mold, you take it out, and then you're left with the complete product. This is how most like plastic toys are made, but also some inline skate frames. An example of a casted frame that's used is on the power slide next. The next way I'm gonna describe how frames are made is called extrusion. And extrusion is when you take a big chunk of metal, you heat it up, and then you put a lot of pressure on it, and you have one small hole, and through that small hole, all the material is gonna pop out. Then you have one long beam in a certain shape. And you can make this hole in all sorts of different shapes. And if you make it in the shape of a frame, you get a really long, like 10-meter long beam of metal, and you can cut it in the length of a frame, and then boom, there you go. This is also how pasta is made. The next technique I'm gonna describe is called CNC. It stands for computer numerated control. Very complicated word. This is a technique where you have a big chunk of metal, so it's a solid piece, and you cut out material just like if you're a sculptor. But except for that, there's a man doing it with a hammer. It's actually a machine doing it with a drill. So the next thing I'm gonna explain is how you at home can tell what your frame is made of. Of course, you can always look it up, and you know already that if you have a power slide next skate, then you have a casted frame. So type in the model of your skate, and then there's a good chance that you can find the specs. But it's also fun to dive a little bit deeper and give you the knowledge of really seeing the differences of these different manufacturing techniques. A good reason to know why you want to know these differences is also because the cheaper skates come with cheaper manufacturing techniques and also worse performance, and the more expensive skates come with more expensive manufacturing techniques and have better performance. And I want you to be able to distinguish those types of skates so that you can be a real expert. The first technique that I described was folding, and if you fold something, you can see that there's never like a real 90-degree angle in anything. So with this rollerblade cruiser, it's real easy that you can see that the edges here are a little bit round. That means that it's folded. The next thing we're gonna check is casting. And casting is done by molds. Molds have different parts. And sometimes a mold can have like up to 7 parts that go in and out of each other. And these parts, they have a little bit of a line in between. So if 2 molds hit, then there's in the center, there's usually a little bit of a line. And that line can also be seen on the product. And this is usually on the edges. So if you look at this frame here, at this spot, you can see a little bit of a mold line. Here I see one as well. All right, So that's the first clue, if you see mold lines. Then the second clue is in the shape. So this is a very complicated dynamic shape, and this is very, very hard to create with CNC or with extrusion. So if you see a complicated shape like this, see stuff like that, then there's a good chance that it's casted. The third thing you can see with the casted frame is there's these little circles of like 2 or 3 millimeters in diameter, and these are pusher pin marks. So these marks are used, there's little pins in the molds, and these push out the product once it's done. Once the mold is open, it needs to be pushed out, and this is yeah, it leaves a mark. So there you go. The downside in having a casted frame is that the thread, which is in the frame here, can be blown out really quickly. So if you tighten the axle and you put too much pressure on it, then this thread will be destroyed. And this happens actually quite a lot. People coming here in the store, we have a way to fix it. So if you have a problem like this, just contact us, because we have a smart way to put an extra axle over it. This way of making a frame is just really brittle, and that's why it's not the best. Then we go with extrusion. I think for most people that are looking for a good frame for their skate, extrusion is the best technique, because it's really strong and really reliable. So how to tell if a frame is extruded? That is, it works really good as a profile. Remember, an extrusion is being pushed out of one shape. So it will definitely work as a sort of a profile. If you look at it from the front here, you see that there's a clear U shape, and then you have this plane and that plane, and it works really good. The next thing is that to create then the refined shape of the frame, the rest of the material is grinded away with the CNC machine. So you will probably see some CNC marks on it as well. And the CNC machine, like I described before, is a sort of a drill. So it has like a moving drill head, and you see lines of the CNC drill here. I can see it with this endless frame here on the inside. You see the lines of the CNC machine. So this is the second tip. If you see those lines of the CNC machine, then it's definitely not casted, so it must be extruded. The next technique I'm going to describe is CNC machining, and how to tell if you have a frame like that. CNC machining actually is not used a lot right now because it's really, really expensive. You throw out a lot of material, and it takes a lot of time to create each frame. So the only frame that I know on the market right now that's CNC machined completely out of one solid block is the Wizard frame, and it costs 400 euros for just a frame. So basically, maybe the easy question to answer if a frame is CNC machined out of one block or not is, do you have the Wizard frame or don't you? Last topic of the day is just for aggressive skating. So this is if you want to go in the skate park and do some grinds. Then there's a new hype, and this is actually metal frames for aggressive skating. And if you're new to aggressive skating and thinking about your best setup, my advice is to get a plastic frame still. It's cheaper and it's reliable. It grinds good on all surfaces, but metal is faster for riding, and it's more responsive, like we described earlier in the video. So you see now that there's a lot of metal frames on the market for aggressive skating, but all of them actually come with plastic add-ons. So you have like plastic sliders on the side and a plastic H-block in the center to do your grinds on. It's also possible to grind on metal. This is definitely possible, and especially metal on metal works really well. So if you only skate in the skate park with your metal frames, then this works just fine. But when you go outside and you want to go street skating, or maybe there's like a concrete curb in a skate park, and if you want to grind those, then this is a little bit more unpredictable if you have a metal frame. And the last thing you want as an aggressive skater is to get stuck while you're grinding and fall. So this is something you have to learn. It's kind of like a new feeling that you get with your frames. If you have a metal frame, you have to be a little bit more cautious with that. For example, here you see a very popular Federlight 3 ground control frame, and I took out the axle for you to show this, that if I press it here, you see that I can bend it. And this is the same for all plastic frames, especially for this specific frame is really weak. So if you take, for example, like a 50-50 balance frame, which has nice thick frame walls, it's a lot harder to do that. But all plastic frames bend just a lot more, so you lose control with it. So it's super nice that there's all these options now on the market. New frame companies are coming out, and there's constant development within the frame industry. Actually, right now, we're selling a lot of frames. If you check out in our warehouse, maybe 2 years ago, we had like a half square meter of frames in our warehouse. But now we have like 10 square meters of frames just in our warehouse. The market is exploding, and it's super fun to try a lot of different things. So if you want to try some frames, come to the store here or check out thisissoul.com. If you want to learn more about inline skating, then watch a few of the videos on our YouTube channel, and we make a new video like this every week. If you like the videos, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cool, bye bye. Frames use aluminum. For metal frames, most frames use I wouldn't say it's worth it. I don't know anything to say about that. I'm not even gonna look at this. I just know it. So it's like it's a machine. Shit, I don't know the English word. Bildhouwer. Can you cut that out? Easy. Boom. Yeah, this could be the whole new video as well, maybe. But all right. If I say one now, can you cut it in?